November 4th, 2019 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. I will call this meeting to order. And I'm actually here to welcome Den 7 and 8 from Scout Pack 3805 from Westwood Elementary School. They're here to help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance today. I actually got to speak with them for a little bit before the meeting about what it's like to sit up here and kind of do this job. So we're excited you guys are here, and all of you are here to help us lead the pledge. So let's all stand up and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Scout salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2.
Thank you. At this time, we will move to item 4 on the agenda. This is a consent docket. Tonight on the consent docket, we have our regular meeting minutes. We have the acceptance of a sewer line and easement, the release of our community development block grant money, and acceptance of a utility easement in Shumard Oaks. Councilors, are there comments, questions, or motions on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent docket. Please vote. I guess that's a vote of 4-0. Or do we wait for Wedlake? Or? No, you're fine. All right. With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. All right, that takes us to public comment on items not scheduled for public hearing. I don't think we have anybody signed up for any of those. So we will jump right down to public hearings. Item 7 on the agenda. Item 7A is receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit for an indoor medical marijuana grower at 3514 North Park Drive in the Light Industrial Zoning District. This is CC-19-165. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, sir.
All right, Lance Gross, how are you tonight?
Great. How about yourself?
Good.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Lance Gross, and I'm with the Community Development Department. And the specific use permit before you tonight is for a medical marijuana indoor growing facility. It's located on North Park. The map on the screen indicate the hatch mark on the map indicates the subject site. And it's zoned IL, light industrial, and it's located within a light industrial park. It's on the southwest corner of Airport and Perkins. And this is a bird's eye view looking to the northwest. You can see Park Drive on the right-hand side, the railroad tracks on the back side of the property, and it's definitely industrial in nature. And right now I'd like to call up Kelly Harris to give the presentation on the application.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening, Kelly Harris with Keystone Engineering, located at 923 South Lowry, here representing the owner tonight. As Lance said, this is located in light industrial. The owner was very strategic in picking this piece of property with a grow facility. He could have chosen to be outside of the city limits, but he did want to be a part of the community, and he values what infrastructure is in place. And then in the future, he hopes to be able to give back to the community as well. There was a question at Planning Commission about the existing overhead doors, and those will stay, however, they will not be functioning. Can I answer any other questions?
Councilors?
Thank you.
Kelly. At this point, I will open the public hearing. We don't have anyone signed up to speak, so I'll close the public hearing. And I'll ask Lance to come back up and let us know what the Planning Commission recommendation was.
Yes, the Planning Commission made a recommendation for approval by a vote of 3-0.
Thank you, Lance.
Yes.
Councilors?
Questions?
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the specific use permit for an indoor medical marijuana grower at 3514 North Park Drive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this specific use permit. Please vote. With a vote of 3-2, with, I assume, Councillor Wedlake and Vice Mayor Darlington voting no, that item is approved. I'm making that assumption. But yes, that is Darlington and Wedlake. All right, that takes us to item 7B, receive public comment regarding a request for a specific use permit for a medical marijuana dispensary at 134 South Main Street. This is CC-19-164. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gross.
Yes. Let's see, this medical marijuana dispensary application is located on South Main Street. The hatch pattern indicates the subject site. It's in a commercial corridor along South Main. It's on the west side of the street. Maple is to the south and Elm is to the north. And this is a bird's eye view looking to the north. And you can see there's parking actually in the front of along the street, but also behind the building and also on the side. Let's see, Kevin Wagner is the applicant, and he will come up and explain his application.
Thank you.
Kevin Wagner, thank you for your time. We're looking to get a special use permit for a medical marijuana dispensary. This is my director of operations and also head of compliance. I'll introduce him. He'll be handling everything that you would need.
Hello, I'd like to thank everyone for their time. Thank you for having us here. It's an honor to hopefully do business in the city of Stillwater. My name is Josh Brown. I'm a compliance initiative officer, as well as the director of operations for Mr. Wagner's operation here located in Oklahoma. We just worked with the city of Del City and other cities as far as receiving certificate of compliances and working hand in hand with the city on addressing any and all issues. This is what we do professionally for the last 10 years, so we look forward to coming into your city and just doing everything the way you guys want it, help the wheels turn, help add to the community and work as a whole. This is our objective, and we look forward to doing business with the city, and we'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for being here. Councilors, any questions? At this point, I'll open the public hearing. There's no one signed up to speak, so I'll close the public hearing. And Lance, let us know what the Planning Commission said.
Yes, the Planning Commission made a recommendation for approval by a vote of 3-0.
Thank you, Lance. Councilors, questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve item CC-19-164.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this specific use permit. Please vote. With a vote of 3-2, with Vice Mayor Darlington and Councilor Wedlake voting against, the item is approved. All right. That takes us down to item 8 on the agenda. I think we're going to say goodbye to our our Cub Scouts while we're making that movement. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming. We're going to be here a while longer if you guys
Go have dinner,
don't have
come
anything else
back.
to do. All right, that takes us to item 8A on the agenda under general orders. This is update on dilapidated buildings scheduled for demolition by January 2nd, 2020. Mr. McGrath, how are you tonight?
Very well.
We're looking forward to hearing updates on all of these properties.
Dennis McGrath, Deputy City Attorney, Mayor, Councilors. As you said, I'm here to give you an update. In August, at your meeting,
Your microphone.
we presented
Mike.
6 or 7 properties to you, and this is kind of the midterm review to see how they're doing. Some of the properties have progressed as you desired, some have not. So I'll just kind of run through them quickly, and then if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. There's 4 properties under the McCollum Family Partnership. 214 North Main, 216 North Main, 1023 West 10th, and 4920 North Main. The last one is known as Babs. The other 2 are the 2 houses across from Sonic on Main Street, and the other one is just a residential property that's been vacant for some time. To date, no permits or anything have been requested by the McCollum family. So that one is pretty much in the same status that it was in when we came to the last time, waiting for them to take some kind of action. There's a property at 711 and a half West 9th, or otherwise known as 711 West 8th. Somehow it came up with two addresses on that property, but it's one property that's owned by Leanne Drummond in a corporate name. She did obtain a permit for demolition, and that is scheduled and should progress as anticipated to cap the sewer and then take the building down. The other two properties that are up for review is 502, 506 South Lowry. Those are two residential structures that have been vacant for quite some time, upwards of 20 years, where they've been trying to do something with the property. No permits have been requested. No permits have been denied or anticipated. Right now, the property is still where it was. However, the owner, Dan Amon, has filed a lawsuit against the city trying to prevent any further action against those properties. That's kind of things in a nutshell, and I'll be happy to answer specific questions if you have any, or Mr. Dorn may be able to expand on some of that.
Okay, so we had 8 properties we talked about that last meeting.
Yes,
or
sir.
Whichever meeting that was.
First meeting.
August 26th,
August
I believe.
26th.
Yes.
One of them was Mr. Jones's property that we've had another discussion about already, and
He's scheduled to come back on the 18th, 2
on the
weeks from
18th.
tonight.
And then one is compliant so far. They've got their permits. They're going to tear it down.
Yes, sir.
And then the remaining 6 have not obtained permits yet, as we requested they do by this date.
That's correct.
Okay. So at this point, our decision would be whether to, I think, request that staff move forward with getting bids for the city to demolish those properties, and then the cost of those demolitions would be put on as liens against the property, each individual property, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Counselors, any questions?
Just so I understand the process, Mayor, if the city demolishes the buildings, could the owners pay that instead of, pay that right away?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I assume they can, if we get the bid and we pay a demolition contractor to do it, they could pay it right away. If they don't pay it right away, it goes on the property as a lien, and then if the property is sold, that money has to be paid back out of the proceeds on the property.
Does it accrue interest or length
That I
of
don't
time?
know.
I believe it does if it goes on the rolls as a lien. I'll double check that, Vice Mayor. I'm not 100% sure.
That would seem logical.
I believe it does, but I can double check that and report back to you.
Okay.
It would generally seem most cost-effective for everyone if the owners take care of these properties before we have to, but my feeling at this point would be that we do start staff down the road of bidding for demolition on the 6 properties that have been identified. Do we need a vote on that item?
You've already directed the city manager to do that in the original order. We have already prepared all of the bid specifications, and based upon your representations to us tonight, we will go ahead and start that process of publishing those bids and start the solicitation process.
On the property where the owner has filed an objection or a legal process, I assume if the district court decides they want to step in, then that, we would just not proceed with our demolition, correct?
That's correct.
We'd have
At this point, there's no reason not to go ahead and advertise.
Yep.
There's not an order in place, but assuming that an order is issued at some point during the process, then we will address it at that time.
Okay. Okay. Counselors, anything further on that item?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
That takes us to item 8B, approve a budget amendment in the amount of $65,000 for the appropriating funds to be used for Phase 2 of the playground project at Strickland Park. Mr. Scott. Nope, that's not Mr. Scott.
Melissa Reeves,
Hi, Melissa.
Deputy City Manager. Jim has hurt his foot, and so he's at home this evening in the course of his job today. So I'm taking his place. But I'm before you this evening to ask you to approve an amendment to our budget. We have received, or will be receiving shortly, some of the funding from Maya's Promise that will go towards the construction of the adaptive playground at Strickland Park. So when we receive additional revenue, we get to raise our expenditure budget, and so that's what this budget amendment is going to do. Raise the revenue by $65,000 and raise the expenditure budget by $65,000.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Counselors, questions or motions?
So, well, Maya's Promise has given that $65,000 initially out of the SMAC funds so that we can get started and do some of the architectural planning and things like that. I could ask you this offline, but might as well do it online.
No, go ahead.
When we donate the rest of that SMAC funding forward, will we do the same thing?
We would.
Okay.
Yes. And
Okay.
that way, if something happens along the way, we haven't artificially inflated our budget at that point.
Sure. We're just keeping it in our bank account to get a little interest while we're waiting. So we'll give it over when it's ready.
That's fine. That's fine.
Just one more opportunity to say thanks to the high school. The
Absolutely.
SMAC, Stillwater makes a change. This month, these funds were raised by high school students. $200,000.
Amazing. So true.
I do have a question, although you might not be the person to answer this one, and I missed the update at the last meeting. I was at Strickland Park this weekend, and the sign, of course, says Phase 1 completed August 2019. I just wondered what Phase 1 was.
It's not completed on August 1,
No, it's not. And I think
they are. I can give you a little bit of an update.
Yeah.
We did update last time, so Jim and I spoke recently, so I can give a little bit of an update. The architects are working on the design of the shade structure, which is the first thing that needs to be laid out in order to finish. Even if it doesn't get installed first, it has to be designed first so that they don't do a footprint on the ground that would prevent the shade structure from being put in. The architects are they're struggling getting to a price point that works with our budget. And so they've gone back to the drawing table several times with that. But they are, I think, within a few weeks of finalizing that, so that we've got the existing playground torn out, that Jim and their crews, the city crews, can go in and start installing the footings and things like that for the playground equipment. We've ordered, the Phase 1 equipment is ordered and here.
Yeah.
So they're ready to go. They just need their center point of the footprint to get started.
Thank you.
Counselors, further questions or a motion on this item?
Motion to approve CC-19-166.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. 8C, approve upgrades for information technology data center and network infrastructure, CC-19-167. Mr. Brad Stewart, how are you tonight?
Director, here this evening to ask for approval for some needed upgrades in our IT data center. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. These upgrade items have been included on our capital improvement plan forecast for the last couple of years, with this fiscal year in mind for doing the actual project. This project was funded this year and included in the IT budget. There are really three components to this upgrade request: server hardware, storage hardware, and some Microsoft software. Those first two components, the server hardware and the storage hardware, have to do with our virtual server environment. Several years ago, the city made a move away from standalone physical servers to a virtual server environment, just to take advantage of the efficiencies, improve manageability of those systems. What that looks like for us actually is we have 3 physical servers in our data center that share resources. They're pretty beefy servers decked out with lots of memory, lots of processor cores. Sharing those resources, we were able to run 75, actually a little over 75 virtual servers on those 3 boxes. So we've gained a lot of efficiencies. We would like to virtualize a few more systems, but because of the limitations on those 3 boxes that we currently have, we're unable to do so. So that's the first component of this upgrade. The second component is storage hardware. We utilize a storage area network, or a SAN, for our mass storage. A SAN is, in the simple terms, just a bunch of hard drives with some intelligence built in so that it looks like one large storage pool. We use this SAN as the storage pool for our virtual server environment. Our SAN is approaching 5 years of age and is also in need of upgrade and expansion in order to do the further virtualization that we'd like to do. So that's component number 2. The last component in this upgrade request is some Microsoft software. Most of the servers in our data center and in our virtual environment are running older versions of our Microsoft software. This would include our Windows Server operating system, our Microsoft SQL database software on our database servers, and the Microsoft Exchange server software that runs our mail system. According to Microsoft's schedule of support timelines, most of those server softwares will be unsupported in 2020. So we knew this deadline was coming. This is another driver for the timing of this upgrade request. So with these needed hardware and software upgrades in mind, IT staff reached out to our long-term partner Dell Technologies and asked them to help us identify the best solutions for our needs. Met with Dell over the course of several weeks to define our needs and our goals, and also building in some future growth. We looked at about a 5 or 6 year progression and what we would need over that amount of time, and we're able to spec out some server hardware, some storage hardware that should meet our needs. Utilizing an existing state contract, Dell is able to package the server hardware, the storage hardware, and the Microsoft licensing all in one purchase. So bundling that will also allow us to see some additional savings. So I do have a recommendation, but I'll pause now. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Counselors?
I think I'm grateful to have an IT department that can keep track of all this. And, you know, when you say something's 5 years old, I mean, in technology terms, that's getting old, so to speak. When we do these upgrades, are we looking at maybe in another 5 years, or?
We figured in about 5 or 6 years to get out of this new equipment, and then we'll be coming back asking, I'm sure, for some more.
Yeah.
How do these upgrades affect, or do they affect, or in terms of security? And you know, we've read a lot. I've seen a lot of some of these ransomware attacks, especially on municipalities, that sort of thing. Does this help us in that regard? Does it? I assume updated software probably does.
Staying current on the software certainly does. We want to be able to maintain our current patches and security patches with Microsoft. As far as the hardware and the virtual server environment, it's pretty neutral as far as cybersecurity goes. A lot of our cybersecurity tools do run on that system. So it will be nice to have faster, newer equipment for that, for sure.
And just for maybe not everybody doesn't deal with this like I do on a weekly basis, but the state contract for something like Dell, this is a pre-bid price, so that we don't have to go out and have this bid by a lot of different vendors. We know we're already getting the best price.
Simplifies the procurement process. It's been pre-bid, as you said. This is the NASPO state contract for all this hardware and software.
Okay. Anything further, counselors? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve staff's recommendation and authorize a state contract purchase in an amount of $520,500, including the 5% contingency from Dell Technologies for server storage and licensing upgrades.
That was a motion and a second on a recommendation that Brad didn't even have to make.
Oh, gosh.
I guess I skipped that part.
I didn't
How crazy
make
would
that
it be
up.
if that's against staff recommendation?
I didn't make that up.
I know. Great that we had the report. So there's a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation and approve this upgrade. Please vote.
Mayor, I didn't hear.
Maybe, okay.
Amy did.
Maybe quietly. I'll move my mic.
With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. Item 8D, approve bid recommendations for replacement of the 26th Avenue Bridge. Mr. Carnes, it's been a while since we talked about this item.
It has indeed. Monty Carnes, Director of City Engineering. We were before you in July to discuss this project. I believe at that time we told you we did not believe it would qualify for reimbursement under FHWA, and in fact it does qualify for reimbursement. We will have to put the funds up front, get reimbursed at some point in the future. That date we do not know. We'd estimated conceptually a cost of about $350,000. As we got into the project, we made some design changes that some were necessitated by the soil conditions once we got out there. Some give us an extended life of the structure, and we found a water line that we have to relocate. We bid the project. It came in at $622,000. It was a low bid. The high bid was $755,000 and some change. As you go through the numbers, let's talk a little bit more about FHWA reimbursement. FHWA will reimburse us for a structure of similar materials, basically the metal pipe. They'll reimburse us for the portion of the project that was still in the right-of-way. When we add the multiple purpose path, that extends the length of the structure, which they will not reimburse. But the big issue is it pushes the head walls, which are the most expensive part, outside of the existing right-of-way, and they would not participate in that cost. So when you put all that together, it means adding the paths about $200,000 that's unreimbursable. We can, for that reimbursed cost at some point in the future, we could put a span bridge across there if we need to, a multi-purpose. It also means that as that area develops from a residential standpoint and it's starting to, there might be other options for a path through that area that would not require the use of that structure, and that'd leave that available for us as well. So our recommendation to you is to not include that path at this time. And in so doing, that reduces our cost about $40,000, but increases how much we get reimbursed. We also found, actually the contractor found a bust in the quantities, which is actually in our favor. That results in a $75,950 reduction. So that reduces our project from $622,000 to $506,000, and that would be if you accept both of those items. $419,000 of that $506,000 would be eligible for reimbursement, which means FHWA would reimburse us $335,000 some odd dollars. Our cost would be about $170,000 for the project. And we gave you several alternatives. One was to continue with the project as it's bid. With the multi-use path, that'll increase our costs. Also may limit our options in the future for the path route. Second alternative was to reject all bids and rebid the project. We don't see any reason why we'd be successful with any lower bid prices. The fourth alternative is try to repair the existing structure, and as we explained to you in July, that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $150,000 that we're spending on a structure that's nearing 40 years old and the end of its life. I threw in a fifth alternative, which was just to go ahead and remove the bridge structure altogether and save the money. It's an alternative. I'm not sure it's a good one, but we went ahead and ran what the cost, user's cost would be for that, and that calculates out about $200,000 annually increase to the drivers who use that project. We calculate that from about 2,200 average vehicles per day. We've got a detour route of about 1.25 miles one way, and we use 20 cents a mile for the variable cost from the IRS to calculate that number. So our happy to answer any questions before I get the recommendation.
Counselors?
Let me just get this straight, Monty.
Yes.
Alternative 1 would be fixing the bridge the way you suggested without the multi-use path.
That's correct.
And that would save $40,000?
That would save $40,000 in cost
And change the reimbursement.
and would increase, it would reduce how much we get reimbursed.
Right.
So those two together would be about $200,000. It would increase our out-of-pocket cost by $200,000 if we leave the multi-purpose path in place.
Okay.
When you say multi-purpose path, we wouldn't be building a path. This bridge would have the extra section width, so it would have room for a path if we ever completed one along 26th Street.
And that was our discussion in July, but as we got into the project, there's actually some value to have all of that paved because we expect it to overtop. So in this case, we were going to go ahead and put the path in place.
From where to where?
From one end of the bridge to the other, but it wouldn't have connected to anything.
Yeah, okay. But
But
keep saying path, and
technically
it
it's-
sounds to me like we're talking about actually installing a sidewalk all the way down 26th Street.
We are
But
not.
We're just talking about
at the bridge.
that
That's
cost
correct.
would be the sidewalk on the bridge.
That's correct.
So now I'm confused again. Alternative 1, which says no path,
That's correct.
will not have the extension on the bridge.
It will not have the extension on the bridge, and it will not have the path
Okay,
in alternative 1.
okay.
You suggested that in the future, if we do want to pave a sidewalk down 26th, we could just build a standalone structure next to this bridge for that portion of the path that needs to cross it.
That's correct.
So it'd be like a pedestrian bridge.
That'd be correct, similar to Western across Stillwater Creek. It would not be that large a structure, but it'd be that same concept.
Do we have a sense of how much that would be to build that standalone bridge?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I bet
But we think it could be less than 200,000?
we would expect it to be the structure. The structure at Airport in Washington is considerably less footage. Was about $20,000 to $25,000 for that span bridge. So, would be 2 to 3 times that cost for something like that.
Right now.
Right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
today's dollars.
Yeah. So it could be 75,000 easily, because you said 2 to
At
3
minimum.
times that
Yes, ma'am.
today.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm inclined to go with alternative 2 and put it in.
Just put it in.
Now, you said, Monty, that there's a daily travel of about 2,200 vehicles. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Do we have any sense of how many of those are motor vehicles versus human-powered? I'm assuming that's 2,200 motor vehicles.
That would be motor vehicles.
Do we
That's
have any
correct.
idea how much?
We have no idea of how many bicycles or pedestrians we have.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, we are starting to see the potential for development on the west side of the stream and both the north and the south side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the connectivity for other
Right, and that's, yeah.
paths and things. I'm trying a blank with what kind of connectivity we might have over in that area. Is it right time to put that in now? I mean, other than the fact that we're looking at a bridge
We're already
replacement.
working on it, yeah.
right?
is
I mean, that's what we have to weigh.
This is one of those, I mean, I talk to people all the time about how we should have built sidewalks in this town 35 or 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And we didn't, and now I can't walk to Walmart, even though it's a mile away from my house. But then I look at this and I go, well, geez, $370,000 is a lot for a little section.
On 26th Street,
But
how much?
it's the bridge, right? So
Yeah.
if you're on a path and all of a sudden you get to the bridge and there's no path,
Well, sure.
that can be problematic.
But I mean, the idea of when we're actually going to have a sidewalk on 26, would this be on the north side or the south side of the bridge?
Right now, we have it on the north side.
So, I mean, when are we actually going to connect the sidewalk to this bridge?
Right.
Seems probably pretty far down the road, maybe like
Maybe.
30 years.
Well, not even, it may not be a sidewalk, but it may be a bike path
Sure.
that would be way more palatable financially. I'm kind of on the line of, we always push these things down and,
Yeah. But again, you do have the option to come back and retroactively put in a path if we don't build that infrastructure on the bridge right now at a cost of around.
I think so. When you look at conceptually the work that's going to be involved with putting a bridge, a path down 26th Avenue. We've got ditches on each side. It's going to be difficult to find the location. It might work better again as we're working with the developers to put it outside the right-of-way, and then you'd have to jog in, use the path, and jog out, where it might make more sense to do something else. I can go either way.
Monty, do you have a picture of this area? I mean, it's just, we talk about things like,
all the time, so
you drive it, I do not.
Well, not since May, anyway.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, right now, that stretch of road, I mean, there's a few housing developments here and there on the north side, but it's mostly nothing on either side of a very narrow
Which is a
two-lane.
great place to ride your bike.
It's, I don't like riding my bicycle on it because it's so narrow and there's no place to ride. And I don't like cars going by me that close, but, I mean, that the $370,000 now versus maybe having to spend $100,000 to do this in the future when we're there, as much as I like the idea of saying we're going to make sure that they don't have to make this decision in the future, or that they don't make this decision in the future, it just, to me, it just seems like too much of a current investment when that extra even if we take out the $100,000 we might have to spend later, that extra $250,000 could go other places right now. And this was already an unplanned cost for us. Being able to take advantage of a bigger portion of the federal reimbursement. I completely agree with you conceptually with the idea that we want to, this is one of our problems. We say we don't think about these things for the future. We just do what we need to do currently.
It's right in there.
But this one, to me, the current cost is just too much to justify doing it, in my opinion. But.
Okay. I still would go with alternative.
Okay. Well,
we have a map. We're trying to get the
good.
real photo with it.
Well, while they're pulling that up, I kind of agree. It's a kind of a frustrating one because we like planning for multimodal use. We like putting that infrastructure in now. And if this was something, in the middle of town or maybe even a piece of property that had development on the horizon, and we knew that was going to be developed at some point in the near future, that may sway me a little bit. But the things holding me back are, one, the fact that it's in a more rural area of town that may not be traveled a lot right now, and we don't know how much it will be in the near future. And two, that we can conceivably come back in and retroactively put in a path if we need to. That's kind of the big clincher for me.
You know how many times we've said we're going to retroactively put something in?
I know.
I mean, there
Even
is
in my
that-
short
there-
time
there
on this
is-
council.
there is that piece of it where, it could be a catalyst for, right? If you have the infrastructure there.
if we were talking about a $40,000 difference,
Yeah.
I also
that-
feel I'm conflicted with the,
If it was going to be an extra 100 now or an extra 100 in the future.
right, easier
let's spend it now,
decision,
but
for
when-
sure.
because we're
It's a
talking
pretty
about-
big cost
15 years
difference.
from now, when we decide that we want to do it, it will be $400,000.
Yeah.
Monty, what about from a?
Can I interrupt you just a minute?
Yes, please do.
Could we have the screen up on the, oh, that we did. Okay, go ahead.
What about from a maintenance perspective? So if you add it now, would we, as opposed to adding a second structure, pedestrian or bike structure later, could we be avoiding additional maintenance costs because everything would kind of be part and parcel with this one structure?
We will have additional maintenance cost if we put it in now because we'll have additional concrete that we'll have to keep sealed, and we'll probably want to try and keep it as clean as possible. I would not want to represent to you that saving those costs would pay for, would really in any meaningful way impact the decision.
Yeah.
But yes, there would be some. So this is Washington Street, right about here. This is the floodway. It's floodplain from over here to over here. This is going to be Walnut and the trailer parks to the north. And let me close this. And Western is going to be right there. So there's a mile from there to there. As I said, we're beginning to see, we've had discussions with the property owner about starting the development in here, and some discussion about some development back in this area. To my knowledge, we've had no discussion about developments back in this direction, to the east.
Monty, will you point again to where the bridge structure would be?
Bridge structure would sit right in there.
What's the road to the right of the floodway?
That is Washington Street.
Okay.
And it dead ends to the north.
Counselors, further discussion, or is there a motion on this item?
Motion to take staff recommendation for alternative one.
Yeah, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff recommendation on alternative 1. Please vote. With a vote of 4-1, with Vice Mayor Darlington voting no, that motion is approved.
In 20 years, Pat, I will buy you dinner when I'm wrong.
I have a steel trap memory, John.
Fair enough, Vice Mayor.
All right, 8E, approved bid recommendations for improvements to Western Road and Hall of Fame from 6th Avenue to Monroe, CC-19-169. Monty, this
So
one's not going
this-
to be as hard, right?
Pardon?
This one won't be as difficult?
Well, actually, it will be.
Are you sure?
Maybe more.
Come on.
Oh, good.
It's been a challenging several weeks writing these reports, I will admit to that. So in October of 2018, you approved a project to improve Western from 6th Avenue to basically Farm Road, and then Hall of Fame from Ridge to McElroy. At that time, we said that we would we would grind the PC concrete portion of that to go from 6th to just north of 3rd under our pavement management, and we're getting ready to advertise that project as part of some other work. And then for the remaining of that project, we wanted to mill 4 to 5 inches of asphalt and then come back with Portland cement concrete in a process we call white topping. And based on the information we had at that time for the cost to do that, it meant that we would not have to spend very much money on that street in the next 30 years. It turned out that that cost estimate was wildly incorrect. Prior to that, let's back up a little bit more, we looked at combining that project, or this project, with our pavement management project to mill and overlay the asphalt that you awarded to Haskell Lemons, I believe, last month. And we were going to bid both those as one project with the hope that that dollar value would attract more bidders and we'd get a better price, even though there were two different scopes of work, one for asphalt and one for concrete. It turned out there was only one company interested in doing that as a combined project. So backed up, we split it into two projects, and we've awarded the asphalt project. But we did include from the previous pavement management project the Main and McElroy intersection. And you'll remember we discussed when we approved that pavement management project for fiscal year 18 that we wanted to mill and put concrete in there because of the way that intersection is constructed. It ruts, it's super elevation, you go up and over. So you're rutting in two different directions. It makes it very difficult. So we had pulled that out and left it in this because we were hoping to white top a lot of other work and we could get a better price. So the bids came in considerably higher, like $1 million over what our revised estimate was for the low bid. And the next bidder was $1 million over that. The low bidder had never done one of these projects before. So we took a second look at the cost and did what we call a life cycle cost analysis, where you sit and you look over the 30-year life of the project, compare various alternatives, what their initial cost is, and what the maintenance cost will be in the future. So we know if we go and do a 2-inch mill and overlay and put asphalt down, we will have more maintenance costs in the future. And we projected those out in the years that we would want to do that per our pavement management program. We took the present value of each of those costs back to today, sum them, and then you compare them. And then we run that on various inflation rates and on various discount rates for discounting back to present value. In every scenario, going back and doing a 2-inch mill and overlay and with asphalt was less expensive from a present value cost of anywhere from $822 million to $1.37 million. Economically, from that standpoint, we cannot justify going ahead with milling that and coming back with concrete. The only way you can justify that is to say, well, we don't have confidence that we'll continue to maintain pavements like we've started to maintain them in the future. And you just bite the bullet and spend the extra dollars. We think the community's committed to the pavement management process. They keep renewing the half-cent sales tax. We see no reason why the community wouldn't support continuing to maintain pavements in the manner that we've been trying to do the last few years. So that would be the only way that we could justify doing the full project. So the options we came up with were to reject all the bids and rebid it. Again, we don't see any reason to believe they'll be lower. You could award it as it's bid. That'll cost us some additional funds about $1.4 million more. Other option is that we go ahead and keep all the components except for the white topping of Western and Hall of Fame, and we leave the white topping of McElroy and Main in the project, and we leave the multi-purpose path in the project as well. And then we would rebid, we'll rework the project, and we'll bid a 2-inch mill and overlay project. We believe all of those scenarios will total about $2.45 million. Excuse me, and that'll be 2 contracts, one for LOP construction, and we would go ahead and redo that contract and award it to them, and they have agreed to accept a contract under those conditions. And then we would advertise for the 2-inch mill and overlay. As I've written in the report, all those options retain the multi-purpose path. That's about a $650,000 cost to put that path in. It would start at 6th and Western, and it will connect at Farm Road, and then it'll join in with what the university has done in some places. Some places there's not a path, and some other places the existing path is in bad shape and too narrow, and we would rebuild it through there. It also includes having to relocate a water line at McElroy in Maine. As we got into that project, there were some water valves in the street that needed to be repaired. Very difficult location to do that with the traffic that going through there. And when we looked at the design to move those out of the pavement and get them behind the back of the curb, it was very complicated. It had a bunch of fittings. Fittings in that situation are likely to move, leak in the future. We're trying to fix that intersection for 30 years. So we backed up and said, well, how would we do it right? And that was, you go back to the east side of Maine and lay a new line, and you go to the north side of McElroy, and you lay a new line, and you change that intersection point, get those valves way out of the way. And so we felt like that was the best thing to do, not only for the water utility, but also for the streets as well. And that cost is $145,000. Excuse me. The cost to fix the intersection is, I believe, $245,000. Those costs are all important in the way that we come back to you and ask for different money, because we're going to ask for money from different accounts. Some of it we would take the intersection out of the half-cent pavement management fund. We'd take $145,000 out of the SUA account, and you will see that on your consent docket for when you approve that. That's the explanation for that expenditure. The remaining funds we would take from the general fund where this project was originally funded. And if I can answer any questions to try and clarify that, I'll be happy to do so.
I guess just from a fiscal perspective, this comes in over budget, period, from what we thought. And if we approve the recommendation that you'll eventually tell us, what will our total overage be? I think I've maybe got confused as we've gone through.
I actually have that. You originally approved 1.6 million. Of that 1.6 million, we have spent, I believe, $165,000, yes, in engineering fees and design fees. Well, it ends up being, we're at 2.45, you add back the 165, You're at about 2.6. We're about $1 million over.
Okay, I see it now in the report.
Yeah.
Actually,
You're about $1 million.
I found my way back to that paragraph.
And the way we split that, the way we recoup the $1 million is we take 245 from pavement management, 145 from SUA for the water line work, and 625 from general fund.
And that's an additional 625 from the general fund.
Over what you've already appropriated.
Right.
That's
Okay. I
correct.
just was trying to get that clear in my head.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what in the contract that would be awarded to LOP, what exactly what projects would be done by them in that contract?
They will do the repair work on the curb and gutter. They will install the multi-purpose path.
Okay.
They would put in the water line. They would put in, and then they would do the work at McRoy and Main, that white topping work as
Okay.
well. And then they would do the pavement markings in that intersection.
So the only thing that would be left is the 2-inch mill and overlay on the section from Farm Road to 6th.
And then jump over from about Ridge to McElroy.
Okay.
Excuse me, from Ridge to Monroe. Not McElroy, from Ridge over to Monroe Street.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I have the map here, if that would make it easier for us.
I would love to see a map.
Okay, so to refresh your memory, this is 6th and Western. It's already concrete down to about this point, and that's in a pavement management project to grind that smooth.
But that's not part of this project.
That's not part of this project.
Okay.
So we would start here with a mill and overlay, 2 inches, and replace existing asphalt with new asphalt to about here. Then we'd jump, because this is all new pavement construction, we'd jump to somewhere up in here. We would mill and overlay the rest of Hall of Fame to Monroe Street here. And that would be a separate contract. That would be the new
That would
contract.
just be, yeah.
LOP's contract would start here at 6th and Western, and we would put a 10-foot multi-purpose path along the east side. We'd bring it through this area. We would tie in to the path that's here, and then somewhere up in here, we have to make a connection, and then from about here over to Walnut Street, we'd rebuild that section. This section from Walnut on is fairly new from the improvements the university's made to their facilities on that side of the street. As I said before, we looked, let me back up. Let's go ahead and talk about McRoy and Main, which this would be this area right in here. We would rebuild, take out the asphalt and put in concrete there.
How confident are you on that 2.45 for the new contract on mill and overlay?
Well, the new mill and overlay would be 1.245. We're pretty confident with that because we just did that project. We just bid that project a couple of months ago, and so we had really new prices to look at.
How much was it?
The 2-inch mill and overlay is 1.245 million.
That's what I thought I said, but I guess I was looking at the total.
Okay.
Okay. Counselors?
You ready for the alternatives?
Yeah, let's hear what you recommend.
Okay, the first alternative is to award the contract to LOP for the work that I described. allocate the funding in the following manner. The $1.435 million previously allocated, $245,000 from the half-cent pavement management fund, $145,000 from SUA, and $625,000 from the general fund. Authorize city manager to sign the contract documents. Second alternative is to reject the bids, redesign the project for a 2-inch mill and overlay and rebid it. We think the cost would likely be higher and require allocation of more dollars from the general fund in that alternative. Third alternative is award the project as bid to LOP. This alternative requires an additional $850,000 on top of the $625,000 from the general fund that we mentioned above. Fourth is to reject the bids and advertise for new bids with the project as designed. Again, we don't think we'd be successful in getting it in the budget with 4. 5 is an alternative that we're not really supportive of, but we think it was important to look at what would happen if we took out the multi-use path. And if you do want to save those dollars that way, be advised that that is a very key component in us having active paths. We have a path completed from Farm Road all the way to Lakeview. This would make a key component for us to connect the southwest to east, southwest to northeast for active or alternate means. And not approving that would not be in keeping with your multimodal policy. But it is an alternative.
Monty, can I
we
just clarify
recommend alternative 1. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Can you clarify on alternative 3, approve the award as bid, that is with the white topping of that area instead of?
Yes, instead of the asphalt that we're
proposing. And
proposing.
it costs $850,000 more.
That's correct.
So I guess my question would be, in running your cost models, so the idea with the white topping is that we don't have to mess with it again for
That's correct.
25 years, whatever that is? Whereas
Well, actually 30 years.
So, but if we do the asphalt, we've got to do it again.
We'd have to do it again in about probably 7 years, and then again after that. But again, when you take those costs back.
Yeah, but I mean, is that, when you say do it again, it's not that we're not going to do a 2-inch mill and overlay again in 7 years, or are we? Because the 2-inch mill and overlay is going to cost us.
No, actually, we would.
Over $1 million.
On that particular scenario, we looked at doing microsurfacing about 7 years out. Okay. And we did do, it's somewhere in there, you do have to do another mill and overlay, but I'm sorry, I didn't bring that scenario with us. But you are correct, we would not do it at 7 years.
So I guess, I mean, I don't doubt your economic models, but $850,000 more now saves at least 1.25 from having to do the whole thing again at least once in the 30 years, right? Which at that point will be way more than 1.25 or 1.245. I guess that I don't. It seems difficult if we're just talking about it being $800,000 more expensive now.
Let's do it for 30 years as opposed to 7.
Yeah.
But again, you're correct. But, well, and I know it gets complicated in this regard. But we also have a lot of places we can use that $850,000. Desperately, we need to use it. And if the life cycle cost analysis had said it was a wise expenditure to do that, I would argue to do that. But from my perspective, if we continue to do pavement management the way that we're trying to do it now,
So you
it's
think
better not to, it's better not to do it.
analysis shows that we'll continue to fund pavement management,
correct.
and so we'll have the funding to do the microsurfacing, and we'll have the funding to do a 2-inch mill and overlay down the road.
At some point in the future, that's correct. If you want to delay it for 2 weeks for me to bring those figures to you, and if you seriously want to consider that, then we can revisit this in 2 weeks.
Well, I guess from what you mentioned there, when you're talking about doing your life cycle, you're not just considering this project, but you're also considering where that $850,000 is going to get pulled from. That means we delay another project, and so it has ripple effects. If all that goes into that, then it makes more sense. If we're just looking at this project by itself, it's hard for me to see how just $850 here isn't better than having to spend over $1 million again within the next.
I'd agree with that. But that's part of why you run this is you say, okay, you're always going to have limited funds. What's the best use of them? And so you compare the alternative projects, and it's kind of a part of the base assumption you've got something else to use that money for.
So it's not project specific. It could be more system. You're looking at a bigger system.
Looking at the whole system, that's
yeah.
correct. If this was the only road we had to fix, I'd tell you it'd be the way to go.
Well, and I know you probably take this into consideration, but that's a pretty main thoroughfare once people enter into town from the west side. So we're not talking, in my mind, about a street that's not. I mean, it's a well-traveled.
That's correct.
Road, and so in my mind, I think, wow, to get that road where we don't have to fix it every 7 years and cause detours of traffic and all that, and spend that money.
That's actually one of the things you consider when you do this, is what are the user's costs. Those are very difficult to define, but the disruption for doing a micro surface is not that great. We can maintain one lane of traffic, and we can kind of do those in off-peak. Even when we go to mill and overlay, we can still do those one lane at a time and do those with not quite the disruption. But you're correct. You're exactly right. Those are things you consider. And if they were really major, or if you're talking urban situations, those really come into play pretty strong there.
And it isn't the only street we're working on.
No, I think as you look at wider budgets,
right.
it's
and as a system,
hard.
We've got it,
But is it the worst?
Is it the worst road?
I mean, if it were a priority.
In terms of arterials, it is one of our worst streets in terms of arterials. As I mentioned to you before, that section from Third to Farm Road or Virginia, basically, that was completed in 1974, and I was the guy that laid the curb and gutter.
That's really old, Monty.
It's really old.
So Monty, the reason you revisited the white topping is because of just the large overage in budget.
That's correct. It's purely an economic. In this situation, it's economic. At Macroy on Main, it's performance-based because of the way the configuration geometry of the road is better suited for concrete than asphalt. In that
so that was kind of your original hope and was to do it in the concrete.
Yeah. That had always been part of that project, was to do that in concrete.
But if we just had all the money we ever wanted, we'd do it white top, right?
We would indeed. Or we'd tear it out and put 10 inches of concrete and 8 inches of base.
Well, I mean, I think it's actually really encouraging to hear about the way you're doing that economic modeling, because I think it's hard to see it just in hard numbers right now. If I'm just looking at 850 versus 1.2 or whatever that is, knowing that you all are running it through a long-term economic model to try to figure out what does that cost over the long term, hopefully means we make a better decision. economically for the city at this point. So I appreciate the work that you guys have put into trying to make this project work. I assume we've fixed our estimating issues in terms of what, this was kind of a new thing for us, right? The white topping, we didn't really know.
I've been distressed about both of those projects, about the guy that did the estimating, and my staff says I can't do any more estimating.
It's good to know. All right, councilors, further questions on this, or is there a motion?
It's a long motion. Hold on. Gotta find my. Can we just say motion to approve staff's recommendation?
You can.
For alternative one.
Okay, that's sufficient, yeah, because.
Is that sufficient? I
We
can
know
find
what
my
that
page.
is.
I just turned away from it. I can find it again.
Second.
I just popped.
So that is a motion and a second to approve staff's recommendation for alternative 1. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved.
And as a follow-up to that, at your next meeting, you'll see the budget amendments as we described.
Thank you. Luckily, we have that extra 200 grand from the sidewalk on 26th Street.
This is a sidewalk I would not compromise with.
No, totally.
I know. My last vote was philosophical.
You've had a couple of those tonight.
Yes, 3 so far.
Item 8F, approved budget amendment to increase landing fee and room rental revenue by $30,000 and $50,000 respectively, Stillwater Regional Airport.
So more transportation this evening, but hopefully this will be a little, go a little easier.
Yes, this is an increasing revenue.
This is money in, it sounds like. This is a good thing.
So again, Melissa Reams, Deputy City Manager, here this evening on behalf of the airport with some happy news. We do have some additional revenues coming into the airport in the form of landing fees and rent. If you remember, we entered into commercial air service on August 23rd of 2016, I believe, if I'm counting my years right. And the subsidies that we had offered American Airlines in the form of rent and waiving landing fees, waiving rent, waiving landing fees, have expired in August of 2019. So they have started paying us, but that was not revenue that we had counted on in the budget. So in order for us to get that revenue into the budget and therefore be able to increase our expenditures, we're coming to you this evening with Amendment 1 of 4, and that will go ahead and increase those revenue accounts for the landing fees. It's going to go up by $36,600. Oh no, I'm sorry, $30,000. And then the room rentals will be the increase from American Airlines, and also the Stillwater Air Service. No, that's not quite. Flight Center. Thank you, Norman. We have moved the administrative offices for the airport out to one of the hangars that came available, and this hangar was for air evac, so it was more living quarters. Very difficult for us to try and lease out to someone else unless they were really in need of showers and bathrooms and a kitchen. So we came up with the plan, or Paul Perigal, our airport director, to move the administrative offices out there, gives them easier parking, much better working space, quieter working space. And Morris Dudgeon, who runs Stillwater Flight Center, was excited to get the old administrative offices. He's now going to rent those from us, and he's going to create a pilot lounge there at the airport for the pilots that fly in. They will be able to nap and refresh, watch the game, I guess, as they're waiting for their passengers to come back. Get briefings, have a conference room. So it's just going to really be a nice area for those visiting pilots. So this evening, we're asking you to increase those two rental accounts for us for a total of $80,000 increase to the budget.
Not going to get an argument from me.
Nope. Finding $80,000 in your pocket.
I know it.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation to increase the, for the budget amendment to increase landing fee and room rental revenue by $30,000 and $50,000 respectively.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, item 8F is approved. 8G, approved budget amendment to appropriate funding to project 20 AP 06810 to construct a climate-controlled baggage return at Stillwater Regional Airport.
Okay, so now comes the spending part of that revenue amendment that you just passed. And over the last 3 years that we have had commercial air service in the visiting with the people who fly in and fly out of our airport, and through surveys, the number one thing that people have asked for is to have their bags returned inside the terminal where it's climate controlled. It's cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Paul Priegel and staff have figured out a way to do this that is hopefully fairly economical. So we are asking you to appropriate $14,500 of the new revenue that you just approved to update the handling system. And for those of you that have been out to the airport, there is that conveyor outside of the waiting area. Well, Paul's plan is to somehow bring that conveyor so that it flows in through one of those little lower windows, and they'll frame that all in, and that way American can put the bags on the conveyor, and the conveyor kind of shoots them inside the terminal.
Someone who used the airport last night.
Yes.
Sat out waiting
Yes.
for, because heaven forbid if I don't check my bag, I gotta check the bag.
Yeah.
I think as we talk about wanting to encourage people to fly, it seems like a little thing, but it's a big thing. And it was mild last night, but I was thinking, a week ago when it was rainy and chilly, I've done that too.
I came in on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And it was cold.
Yeah.
Everybody came into the terminal to stand and wait for
Right.
the bags to actually come out, and then they went back out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we really felt like, again, as Councilor Zanotti voiced, it is a small thing, but to improve customer satisfaction and that customer loyalty, we felt like this would be a good way to do that, and fairly inexpensive to attain that goal.
Councilors, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. To approve the budget amendment to appropriate funding to project 20AP06810 to construct a climate-controlled baggage return at Stillwater Regional Airport, CC-19-17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the item is approved. Item 8H, approved budget amendment to increase the transfer fund 820 and increase the transfer fund out of 810 in the amount of $46,842 for Phase 1 Apron project match at Stillwater Regional Airport.
Okay, so again, another expenditure of the revenue that you all approved. We account for our big grant projects in a separate fund, in Fund 820. And so some of the projects that we've been working on is connecting the parallel taxiways. We're going to rehab 422, runway 422, and then we've got a 3-phase Apron project. Each one of these projects is funded with grant dollars through FAA. And again, if you'll recall, our match on these grant projects is 10%. So even though that sounds like a small dollar amount, on a $5 million project, that's $500,000. We did have a reserve in that 820 fund of $1 million. You all approved that for us last fall. We have committed those funds to some of these previous projects that we've been working on, and it got us a good distance down the road on the match on this Phase 1 of the Apron project. we need to use a piece of that additional revenue and move it over to 820 so that we can fully fund our match on that side for that construction project. That's why, I know this one looks a little odd, but that's why you're increasing the transfer out of 810. So that's an expenditure, and you're increasing the transfer in 820, that's revenue. So those two things, even though on the document they add together, they're doubled, they really are two separate ins and outs.
Counselors?
Got it.
Ready for a motion?
To approve the attached budget amendment to appropriate funding to transfers out of Fund 810 and transfers into Fund 820 to be used as the Phase 1 apron project match at Stillwater Regional Airport, item CC-19-176.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. Takes us to 8I. Approve budget amendment to appropriate Fund 820 cash to Project 19 AP 05820, Phase 1 apron project match at Stillwater Regional Airport.
So picking up where we left off, you moved money over to 820. That increased the cash. So we increased the revenue and we increased the cash. Now we need to take all this cash and allot it to the project. And that's what this budget amendment will do. And as you're looking at it, you're going, well, we only increased the transfer by $46,000. Where did the other money come from? It is from the cash balance that is inside this fund, and that will pretty much tap out the cash balance in 820. But that's the purpose of this fund, is to move all this money to those grant projects and to account for those grant projects.
Excellent.
Motion to approve the attached budget amendment to appropriate Fund 820 cash to project, aforementioned project, Phase 1 apron project match, item CC-19-177.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that budget amendment is approved. Item 8J, approve a budget amendment to close projects 20 AP 04105. I'm not sure what that word is. Releveling of the departure terminal.
Reveling. It was a lot of different words.
Wasn't sure what that was. Releveling of the departure terminal at Stillwater Regional Airport and release of the unused budget to the capital fund for future project appropriation. CC-19-178.
So last budget season, Finance Director Christy Cluck came to you and presented our new capital improvement plan or program. And this project was one of those items. We needed to go in and a lot of people refer to this, what is it? A trailer house or something like that, but the little portable building that we have out at the airport, where is our sterile area, that's our departure terminal. Well, over time, it shifted, and so we had to go in and make sure that it was level again. We're starting to see some cracks, I think, in the building is what led them to this conclusion. The happy news is we were good guesstimators this time, and we guesstimated $5,000, and it came in at $3,400. What we are asking you to do tonight is adjust that project budget and that line item budget down to $3,400. That will allow us to close this project, and that frees that $1,600 up in the fund to be reappropriated to other projects that come along. Christy, Norman, McNichol, Paula Dennison, and I this year are going to serve as your capital improvement committee as we're kind of working through how do things work with this new mechanism that we have. And so by freeing this up in this project, this is kind of that first step. So then there's fund balance there that could be appropriated to new projects as they come available.
You're not just going to give it all to Monty?
No.
If you can do a sidewalk for $1,600, however.
Would you like that? I would like that. I mean, his projects take my breath away, to be quite honest with you. So I'm asking for your approval this evening to complete that budget amendment.
Motion to approve a budget amendment to reduce project 20 APO 4105 by $1,600 and release the unused funds to the capital fund.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that budget amendment is approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa, for
Appreciate
walking
it.
through all of that stuff
Yeah.
very clearly. We appreciate it.
I'm excited about the climate control bag.
I really am
Really?
too. I am too.
Yep. That takes us to item 10, ordinances on first read. Ordinance 3444, an ordinance rezoning attractive land, addresses 1199 West Airport Road from RSS Small Lot Single Family Residential District to CG Commercial General District. This is the ordinance on the item we approved last week, or 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, whenever that was.
Yes.
Councilors?
Motion to advance ordinance 3444 to second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance the ordinance to second read. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, ordinance 3444 is advanced to second reading. On second reading, we have ordinance 3443, an ordinance closing 12.5 feet of right-of-way on the east side and on the west side of Southwest Street from 4th Avenue to 6th Avenue. Councilors?
Motion to adopt ordinance 3443.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 3443. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that ordinance is adopted. That takes us to reports from officers and boards. Mr. Dorman.
Request for an executive session pursuant to 25 OS subsection 307B1 of the Open Meeting Act for the purpose of confidential communication regarding the employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of Stillwater City Manager Norman McNichol and City Attorney John Dorman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McNichol.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I want to remind everyone that council seat number 3 is up for election for a 4-year term. Residents interested in running for Stillwater City Council can file for the election the week of December 2nd through the 4th at the Payne County Election Board between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. The spring municipal general election is February 11th, 2020. Runoff election is scheduled for April 7th, 2020 if needed.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Zanotti.
Yes. We would like to celebrate Emergency Management Director Rob Hill and Assistant City Manager Paula Dennison on their contributions to an award-winning climate tracking tool. This tool won the American Planning Association Oklahoma Chapters Award for Outstanding Public Outreach Program Project Tools Community Initiative. So congratulations to Rob and Paula. Pretty cool.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, it is hard to believe, but it's about time to start talking budget again. Do we ever stop talking budget? No. If you have any suggestions for next year's fiscal year's budget, give us your input using Balancing Act. You can find the link at stillwater.org under Civic Engagement.
Excellent. Councilor Wedlick.
Yes, sir. If you're interested in helping the city of Stillwater plan for the proposed redevelopment of the area of town near Boomer Lake Station, please apply to serve on the BLS Tax Increment Financing Review Committee at stillwater.org. I think we've had one application thus far. And anybody that's interested in having a say in how this area of land or this property is redeveloped, I urge you to go to stillwater.org and fill out the application. So. Yep. Plan to get underway on that pretty soon, actually.
Thank you.
Is there a cutoff time for the applications?
We initially had the meeting scheduled for this Thursday, the 7th, so I would assume you want to
I think we're probably going to delay that at least a week.
You want to go a week, or we could do
maybe
2
even
weeks?
2?
2 weeks.
Do we need to vote those members? Do you need to appoint them?
No,
Do we need to
no.
wait?
The TIF committee, actually, the taxing jurisdictions, they all have a seat at the table. And so as chairperson, Councilor Wedlake will bring a slate of 7 names. So even though you apply online, which we encourage you to do, we will, with Dr. Wedlake's help, whittle that down to 7. And then those 7 will be presented to the representatives of the taxing jurisdiction, who will select 3 to sit with them on this committee.
Right. So that group will make the selection,
Yes.
not this group.
Right,
Yes.
right.
We already picked our rep.
That's right.
That's Counselor
Thank you,
Wedlake.
sir. Yes.
So in answer to Counselor Jaloski's question, Patty, do you think next Wednesday? So that would be what? 11, 12, 13? Okay, November the 13th, end of business.
Thank you all very much. Counselor Jaloski.
Yes, some new topics are waiting for your input on Speak Up Stillwater. Share your input on streetscaping near the OSU campus, the Husband Street Bike Corridor, and more. Make your voice heard. Go online now to speakup.stillwater.org.
Thank you very much. And I have a note here that the Stillwater Police are working to educate residents on the new firearm laws and encourage gun owners to practice responsible habits. You can watch the police department's PSA video at stillwater.org to learn what you need to know. It's actually a really great video, great information there if you're interested in that topic. All right, that takes us to appointments. We have a few things to talk about here. One, the Sister Cities Council has an open seat for its student representative. There's a seat there for a student, and we have an application from Yuki Clark. So I'd like to nominate Yuki to the Sister Cities Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Yuki Clark is appointed to the Stillwater Sister Cities Council. On the Rural Water Advisory Board, we have a vacancy based on the expiration of a term, and the Rural Water Corp has nominated Corey Clark to fill that position on the Rural Water Advisory Board. So I will make that nomination of Corey Clark for the Rural Water Advisory Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Corey Clark is appointed to the Rural Water Advisories Board. Thank you, Yuki and Corey, for your willingness to serve in those ways. Let's see, I think I have one more, right? Yes. On the Stillwater Reinvestment Plan, the Downtown Campus Link Project Implementation Policy Committee. So this is our TIF number 3 that was approved last year. We have a vacancy on that advisory committee, and we had an application from Sarah Seams to be appointed to that vacancy, and so I'd like to nominate Sarah to the Investment Plan, Stillwater Reinvestment Plan Downtown Campus Link Project Implementation Policy Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Sarah Seams is appointed to the TIF committee, for lack of a better term. Thank you again, all of those folks, for their willingness to serve in these ways. That takes us to executive session, so I'll go ahead and recess the City Council meeting at this time and call to order the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for November 4th, 2019. On consent docket, we have approval of minutes and the $145,000 in funding related to the construction project that we discussed at the City Council meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket's approved. Under general orders, item A, approve wastewater treatment plant purchase of Wonderware SCADA software at a cost of $16,174, plus the software maintenance agreement for an additional $7,258 for the initial year. SUA-19-37. Mr. Driscoll.
Good evening, trustees. I am James Driscoll, the Water Utilities Director, and I'm here tonight to discuss need for an upgrade in the SCADA software at the wastewater treatment plant. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. It's basically the software that controls all the plant, everything that goes on the plant, all the processes, brings that data back for the operators. Our issue with our current SCADA software is that the current version runs only in Windows 7. Windows 7, as Brad Stewart discussed earlier, won't be supported after the end of the year. So we're going to have to do something. With the lack of support, there's issues with security and keeping that software going. So upon learning this, our staff requested a price quote from Wonderware, who's our SCADA provider, and that quote came in at $16,174. Also quoted was an annual software maintenance agreement to keep that software current and to also get support. That quote came in at $7,258. That's an annual renewal. If approved, that would go into our O&M budget as a request. The combined cost would be $23,432 for that version upgrade and that initial year of software maintenance. Considering this, staff recommends to upgrade the Wonderware SCADA software to a current version capable of running in Windows 10 at a cost of $16,174 and starting the yearly software maintenance agreement for an additional $7,258 for the initial year. And I'll try to answer any questions if you have any.
Trustees, anybody want to try a question about SCADA software?
Well, I mean, not to be flip that, though, it's a name like Wonderware. I mean, you would hope.
Hopefully it's wonderful.
Yeah. James, do you guys try and coordinate with our IT, with the rest of that, just to kind of make sure that there's, like you said, this is running on Windows 7. It's not going to be working after 2020, after this year, they'll switch somewhere else. So is it about the same time frame to look at updating technology for utilities also?
This will be a quick upgrade for us because we don't have a lot of infrastructure. We actually discovered this working with IT on another project, and that's when it came to our attention that we would lose support at the end of the year. So with that, we're just moving real quickly to get that software upgrade. And we are changing a little bit of hardware, but it's minimal changes. Those were in the other project anyway, so it's not an additional cost to this request.
Trustees,
Did you give our recommendation? Yep.
He did.
Okay. Motion to I didn't want to jump ahead. Motion to approve the purchase of SCADA software upgrade in the initial year of software maintenance from Wonderware for the total amount of $23,432 and the associated budget amendment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the purchase. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. All right. I think that takes us down to the bottom of this agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater Utilities Authority is adjourned. This time I will call to order the Stillwater Economic Development Authority meeting for November 4, 2019. On consent docket, we just have regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve consent docket.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. Takes us to general orders. Item A, Economic Development Quarterly Report. Mr. Mingus.
Nobody cares about our two items, I guess.
You guys have really hung
You guys
in
sure
there,
know how to clear a
though.
room.
Save
You
the best
have.
for last.
Normal quarterly update, start with the activity and then talk a little about some of the miscellaneous activities that we're working on. So as far as RFP activity, our leads, we had 26 that we received in the quarter and responded to 8. We have 19 active projects on the books right now, but as we've discussed, that number's inflated as far as who we contact on a regular basis. It's more like 6 or 7, but we wanted to make sure these 8 obviously are in there until they tell us otherwise. We had 2 site visits in the quarter, one on the primary job side, manufacturing, one on restaurant retail. The restaurant retail one, they did choose a facility, they purchased a facility, and they'll be announcing shortly. It's an existing facility, so it's not a new build. It's a repurpose of an old, but it does, I think, upcycle it a little bit. It was a fast food, now it's going to go a little more fast casual. It's nothing new as far as the type of food it serves to our community, but I do think it's going in the right direction. I think anytime that you can go from, I'm not the healthy eater, don't get me wrong, but you can go from fast food to something a little bit nicer, it's a good option. And then the site visit that we had, they actually have already come back again. We met with them last week. It's an existing company looking to expand and have engaged outside help on that one as well. So we'll be submitting another response from them soon. As far as kind of the miscellaneous updates, you've probably read in the last couple weeks, Armstrong has announced that they're going to lay off a few folks and consolidate with some of their legacy business that was here to their facility in Pennsylvania. I'm not mentioning it to be a downer, but I think it does show that we need to continue to support our local companies, manufacturers, to continue to find the newest product that their organization is building or researching and find ways to get those product lines in our community. And so working with ASCO's national standards of the world to make sure that if they do have expansion opportunities, we need to make sure that we're competing vigorously for those, so that way we don't get caught in a situation where we have a legacy product being built here. We had a cool event last month, or 2 months ago, I guess, or in this quarter. Trenton celebrated 3 years with the Chamber on August 22nd. Also, I'll get 3 years in December. So it's pretty exciting to see some tenure within our organization. You all know, as you're starting to build long-term plans for a community, you need tenure, you need someone going after a similar vision for a long period of time. So we're pretty excited that he stuck around and hung out with us for a few years. Continuing education, we continue to attend conferences and plan for the future. So we attended the Governor's OEDC conference back in August, and we're setting some dates in late 2020 to sit for our exam, the Certified Economic Developer exam. So if you remember last year, we talked about all the training and coursework that we had to attend. Then next year, we get to actually go sit for the exam and get punished for a few hours. Actually, it's 2 days. Some site selector networking opportunities that we continue to work with Oklahoma City Chamber on. So we had our Rangers game that we attended last quarter. We hosted a site selector from Site Selection Group for breakfast last quarter down at Kitchen 324. If you've ever been down there in Oklahoma City, it's fantastic. I recommend it. And then I know this wasn't in last quarter. We just did it this weekend, but since it was so fresh in my mind and it was such an awesome weekend, I want to talk about we did a FAM tour this weekend and hosted 2 site selectors, another one from Site Selection Group and another one from Newmark Knight Frank. They flew in direct. They're both from DFW area, so we flew them in straight to American Airlines. We put them at the cottages at Sparrow. If you haven't seen those, they're beautiful. If you're hosting anyone, you want to do something really unique, it's a really cool place to stay. And then we went to the football game. We do what you do in fall in Stillwater, so we tailgated a little bit. Went to some of the tailgate guys' corporate tailgates. The university helped us out with some tickets. And then while we were up there, we were able to introduce them to a few folks. So we went and saw Burns. Senator Langford was up there. Some of our local bankers and developers. We were able to kind of have some organic conversations along the way. And then Paul Priegel was there, and it's always nice to have a former police officer when you have folks that make unique asks. Somebody said, "Hey, who are those people on the roof up there? I want to get up there." And I was like, "Well, that's not part of the tour. They don't pay me for that." But Paul, texted, and Leon got us up on the roof for a little bit. So we took a picture, and it was on LinkedIn today. The site selector already put it out. Thanks Stillwater for an awesome weekend. It was us on top of the roof with a full football stadium behind. It was pretty cool. So I was pretty excited about that. That's our first time to have one of these FAM tours. We've partnered with Oklahoma City. So Oklahoma City picked up the tab for both the flight and the hotel, and then we took care of entertainment while they were here. And so it worked really well. They've agreed to do more of these, and so we're hoping to get more site selectors in town and see the quality of life side. Christie's group has been doing FAM tours for a while, right, for travel writers and things, and this is our version of that. We get the site selectors here outside of a site visit where we're talking utilities and water and actually show them what it's like to live in town. So,
do you always have those on winning weekends?
I'm sorry?
You always have those on winning football weekends?
It's pretty nice. They showed up in purple, too, since they're from DFW. That was kind of part of it. We thought they would want to come up and see, so they wore their, actually it was more white. They didn't go all obnoxious purple on us, but it was kind of fun that we won. I don't know if they're going to watch this or not, but I don't want to bag on them too much. But it was a true community effort on our end too. So Wilson helped us out with some courtesy car. Wilson Auto Family helped us out with courtesy cars. Obviously the president's office with the tickets. Oklahoma City Chamber Mary Joyce carved out a few minutes on Friday to sit down with Erica and talk about, and actually Bayfar was there as well. So we had Interworks represented, two hometown guys running a tech company. It was really cool for them to hear that. So I was excited about it. Some community development efforts that we're doing. So last quarter we had Picnic in the Park. It's a free event that we do out at Boomer. We had our mayoral State of the City. Will got to address a group of 150. I did tease him. He beat Burns's attendance record for last year. So you're doing something right that people want to come hear you.
I think that goes both ways, either right or wrong.
Well, that's true. No one heckled, I don't think. I think it was a pretty easy crowd. And then Leadership Stillwater is trying something a little different with their community project that they do every time. And they're trying to create a kind of a grassroots effort to figure out what our MAPS project looks like. We had something similar several years back with our Stillwater. And so they're going to review what we did well, maybe we didn't do well on, speak with folks about what types of projects they want to see. They were in our conference room today talking PR and marketing and all that. And so I know they've met with, I think, some of you or most of you and some other folks on both the for and against from the last project. And I'm really excited to see what they come up with. And I know they're going to try to get some time in front of you guys and present something to you on maybe in 2020, putting something on the ballot. Whether that be quality of life or infrastructure, I don't know. That's for them to decide on projects. I'm just excited they're taking on a bigger initiative other than hosting a party for all of us to go have a little fun. And then finally, and then I'll answer any questions you might have. The Work Readies community, the ACT initiative that Rebecca and I went up to Omaha, I guess it would be about 4 or 5 months ago. We've been trying for the last 45 to 60 days to set up our kind of unveiling event, and we've been working with Governor's Office and Department of Commerce, and we just couldn't coordinate anybody's schedule. And so we're just going to go ahead and put it on the calendar in November, and we're going to have more of a local feel without those dignitaries, and then they'll come back once we become certified 6 months to a year down the road and have that party. So sorry we haven't launched that one. I know I was really excited about it. It's just trying to get calendars when you're talking about statewide officials and everything has been difficult. So look for those invites. You all get personal invites from us on that as well. And then I'll answer questions.
Thank you, Justin. Trustees?
I'm so excited about leadership class project.
Yeah.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. It's been fun to see the previous classes get together and do an event and raise money for worthy causes. Mm-hmm. What we challenge the group is, you could do something a little different and harken back to the call pipeline conversation several years ago, and those were all grassroots, right? MAPS was a group of folks in Oklahoma City. You could be the class that creates a framework for us as a community, where if we have these initiatives, we aren't relying on you all as counselors, city staff to do that, but we have some sort of vehicle to communicate that through. So I'm excited. I gave him my 2 cents today on what projects I wanted on there, so we'll see. I don't know if I'll make it.
Well, I just wanted to mention that the meeting we had this weekend with your site selectors I thought was great. I had the opportunity to be in another site selector meeting with Justin and Trenton a while back, and I think the relationships I see you guys building with some of these folks really do, I think, will start to pay even more dividends. And I think it's a good thing to see you all focusing not just on the specific response to some of these requests, but actually building some of these relationships with these folks and getting them to see, what it is we're trying to sell them on a larger level. I think that level of networking and relationship building has been difficult some at the chamber with some turnover. Oh, yeah. And you mentioned tenure. That's a good thing. So I think I was happy to see the sort of rapport you guys have built with some of these folks on some big projects and some difficult decisions that these companies have to make and that sort of thing. It's good to see those relationships being built and the sort of trust that they seem to have for you guys. So that's I just wanted to give you kudos for what you guys have built there.
Thank you.
That networking piece is so important. I think it's part that we just don't really, it's not a hard asset that you can really put on paper. But I was at a conference for my day job this last week and met a lawyer from Quebec whose company just purchased a manufacturing facility in Ponca City, and he wanted to talk to me about their difficulty in finding labor and potentially skilled labor. And I said, well, you know, there's a university about 45 minutes away from your facility. And so we started having that conversation. And just, you know, those types of opportunities, I think for all of us, are so important, and it's hard to quantify. So, you know, great to see you guys out there doing that stuff and making those connections. So, do I have to ask?
Nope, you don't.
What do we need to do?
So a few things. One, I wrote this down, and the fact that you appointed somebody to the Sister Cities Council was fitting. You know, we've had a conversation. We've had some folks reach out to us to potentially engage in an additional sister city relationship, and we've been navigating how that works and if this is something that we want. And so I'm putting this out to you and the council that we currently have, the Sister Cities Council. What do we want to do with that program long term? Are we comfortable with one Kamioka? Are we comfortable with how we're engaging in them currently? Do we need to breathe a little life in that? Does it make sense strategically for our community to engage cities on all the continents that have some sort of similarities to our community? Is that another networking opportunity as we go and look for foreign direct investment? So that's just something to be thinking about, that I don't think we've revisited the Sister Cities relationship in a while. And clearly people want to engage in us, and it's, without having a direction, how we respond to them is a little difficult. Continued focus on dilapidated buildings. I know they're tough conversations, but I appreciate it. We've tried to land folks inside the TIF district. We had this conversation at our Economic Development Committee the other day. It's tough to justify some of the prices that folks want for the land when they can look at some of their neighbors and see that we maybe haven't done the things to protect their investment within that area. And so I know they're not easy for you all to have those conversations, but I think developers appreciate folks that are looking to invest into that if I'm going to spend $50 a square foot for a piece of dirt, you know, how are you going to protect my investment? So thank you. And then finally, the same drum I've been beating for a long time, and I'm actually glad that you were on a site visit to hear this. Economic development sales tax is something I think that we need as a community. Ponca City has one, Armour has one. We continue to get requests for folks to help incent projects. And we had one that said, hey, we're looking to bring a facility to your town, and I don't want a piece of your economic development incentive right now, but if we look to grow for future projects, so talking about earlier when I said getting new business from an existing manufacturer, they laid out an example of how they would access that. And they were pretty reasonable. It wasn't, hey, we want you to go get $5 million a year, and we want all of it for us, but go get, you know, a sales tax and allow us to have a piece of it, and here's how we would do it. So I know you have a lot of things in 2020 they're going to be looking at as far as bond issues. Leadership Stillwater is probably going to, you know, come forth with an ask. We have bridges and things, but if we would have had that already in place, that would have been one final hurdle we would have crossed probably at that site visit right there, and it would have been done. Now we're trying to walk through with them on how we would potentially set that up, what are the politics around it, and all of that. And so I just put that out at your feet again, an economic development sales tax, even if it's only an eighth or a quarter. You know, an eighth could get us $1 million a year. That's a lot of money over a 10-year period to invest in, you know, our product development, so sites, maybe incenting companies with infrastructure. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff that we could do. So pass some more taxes.
That's it? That's all you want?
just more taxes.
Just more taxes. That's it.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Trent. We appreciate you guys. Okay. That takes us to, gotta look at the right agenda. Hold on. Appointments?
Yes.
Yes, appointments to the Tourism Advisory Committee. Okay, so we established a Tourism Advisory Committee. It consists of, 7 members? Is that what it is? Is it 5?
7.
7, yeah. A member of the SEDA board, city manager, a representative of Visit Stillwater, a representative of the university, and then 3 community members. So we, the city manager, the Visit Stillwater has nominated Chris Norris to be the representative. The university has represented Joe Weaver, nominated Joe Weaver to be the representative. And then, so we need to designate a chair from our board, from SEDA, to act as chair of this committee. And then we need to appoint 3 citizens at large. We received 8, I think, nominations or 8 applications from folks to serve on this committee. to be honest, just haven't had the time to go through and talk to some of those folks and get enough information to be comfortable making those nominations tonight. So on that front, I would like to table the nomination of those 3 citizens at large to our next meeting, which would be November
18th.
Do we need to officially confirm Chris and Joe, or are those?
No, they just designate them.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to designate Elaine Zanotti as the representative from the SEDA trustee board to serve on the committee and act as its chair, if she's willing to serve.
Sure, you bet.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to designate trustee Zanotti to the Tourism Advisory Committee. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that nomination is confirmed. And again, we'll be taking some time to talk to the folks who have applied for the 3 other open positions, and we will get those nominations done at our next meeting. That takes us to adjournment for SEDA. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn Stillwater Economic Development Authority. Please vote. Oh. With a vote of 5, I don't think that registered. There were just 2 of us that were up there. But I'm sure that was a 5-0 vote. We are now adjourned. It only showed 2 names up there.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, at this point, I will reconvene the Stillwater City Council at item 14. Is there a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to enter executive session for the items listed on the agenda. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, we'll now enter executive session.